just started fifth grade this week. My family serves as a big inspiration, just like the interactions that we have, watching my grandma cook, and just having them so accessible and close by, and seeing the way that they move around in our neighborhood. We've been there forever is really one of my biggest influences. So just growing up there and in the building and with my family has it really inspires me and is one of my biggest influences, and really is what motivates me to write, to continue to tell the stories of us and where we live and how we grew up.
Oh, okay. Do you have any hidden meanings in your books?
Um, there is one, and I'm hoping it's not like a hidden meaning. I'm hoping that folks, when they read the book, it resonates with them. I think one of the big ones is Roe and I were really intentional about showing our main character, Jefferson, correcting adults. I think it was really important for us for it not just to be peer to peer, but to actually have a child telling an adult, like, hey, like, you're saying my name wrong. And I think a big part of why we did that was to kind of challenge the notion around adults are always right or they know everything, which is not true. We make mistakes. And I think it's so important that as an adult, like as adults, that I hope that when adults are reading the book, that it's like a little reminder that we should always be intentionally listening to children. And if they're asking of something of us, that we should honor that request. And then follow up, right, with changed action or behavior. Because adults are not always right. And I think that we should intentionally listen to children and change our behavior if they're asking us to change something. And in this case, in our book, it's like, the character Jefferson is asking the adults, like, hey, like, you're not saying my name correctly, and I want you to say it like this. And then you see, like, towards the end of the book, the adults start saying it correctly. And I think it's so important um, that we continue to challenge power dynamics between adults and children. And we should definitely start listening to children more, because adults are not always right.
That is true.
It is so true. It is so true. Children deserve to be listened to, and if they ask for something of us, we have to do it.
Yeah. And then I think it's also important that you mentioned that, because it's also, that is, for instance, with your nephew, that's who he is. Your name is a big part of who you are. And
Yeah,
it's
it's a big part of
important.
your identity.
Yeah. And
And in the case,
especially, go ahead.
and in the case of our character, right? Like, he was named after his grandpa, right? And that's why it has so much significance, because he loves his grandpa, right? And that's like his big connection with his name, and he wants to honor it the way that it is.
Correct. Yeah. Were you able to collaborate with the illustrator for this book?
Yes, we actually did. So the illustrator, her name is Carla Monterosa, who I love. She's also Salvadorian. She lives in Canada. She's incredible. And we actually get so many compliments on the illustrations of the book. People love it. And one of my favorite things about Carla was she has an amazing sense of color theory. Like, all the colors are so beautiful and soft. um she just really plays around with colors. Like, each page has like its own significant color. Yeah, or she really plays around with it so beautifully. Like, you can see like the lavenders, the blues, the yellows, the greens. And that's something that I really loved about her artistry. Yeah, she's incredible. So um back to the question about collaborating with her, Ro and I were very fortunate that our book got published at Little Libros. It's a small Latina owned business, and something that they really value is collaboration with their authors. And I think that that's not always true for every single publisher. I know that usually the norm is, as an author, you don't get to see the illustrations till the book is like at the end. And we were very fortunate with Little Libros to actually be a part of the process. So we actually helped build Jefferson, the main character in the book. So we got to see early like illustrations and different iterations, and we actually came to a conclusion on the character you see now, all together as a group. And the cover of the book, actually, I had forgotten about this, but as I was thinking about this question last night, I remembered this was Ro and I already knew how we wanted the cover to look even before we started submitting it. Like he has, we remember very vividly. Well, he's been a teacher for more than 30 years in LAUSD, and I'm a product of LAUSD, so I've been, I've gone through everything, and I remember vividly in kindergarten, first grade, that we would make these giant folders like this big, and then they would put a string around it and then put it over you. So that is what the cover is a symbol of. Yeah, you can see the string, and then like when you go home, they put your homework and all the important papers in there, and then you like be with your big necklace just walking home, and then your mom would be like, everything's in here. So that is kind of like an ode to like, and I'm sure they do it in other different states and around the world, but that was definitely an ode to being an LAUSD and being an LAUSD student. And we always knew that was a cover, and we pitched it to Little Libros and our illustrator Carla, and they loved the idea and they went with it, and that's what Carla came up with. But yeah, so we definitely got to collaborate, and I'm really grateful that we were able to be a part of that process, because we're brand new to publishing, to writing books. So it was just another way to like really learn like the other side of bookmaking, and what does it entail for it to happen. And we were able to collaborate and learn a lot about the illustration process. So we're super grateful, and we're really grateful to Little Libros for making that process available to us.
That's great because illustrations, I think sometimes people don't think about um, like the relationship that it does play. Like, I mean, there's books, yeah, where you're imagining it, but it's kind of cool to see the process. And like you said, you were able to see it and see it come along. And even like you said, what you already had in mind, and then to see it, illustrated this way that's really cool. I mean, I could
Yeah,
see
no,
the folder,
yeah, right. Like you can see it. I can see like when it's like I think I remember like even walking. I was like, because I live like my elementary school is like right down the block from where I live, and I think um, as we were writing the book, I remember seeing some children walking by home like with their big folders, like all heavy with paper, and I was like, oh my god, that is definitely the cover of the book. So I'm really glad we were able to pay a little homage to that. It's really cool.
Yes, very cool. So, how did quarantine change your writing habits or your space?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So Ro and I, we pre-pandemic, it took us about a year to write the book, and a big reason why it took us a year was Ro and I both have 9 to 5 jobs. And Ro is Mr. Ro. He's a parent. He has four. Am I missing one? Yeah, he has four beautiful children, and an amazing dog who I love so much. So we would actually meet every single week at his house, and his wife is actually a writer too. So once their kids were like asleep at like 8 p.m., I would like head on over, and his wife would be writing in her office, and then we'd be writing in like the big kitchen table where they live. So it was just like 2 hours of just everyone writing, and it was really great, a great collaborative process to like be there. We always like make a joke, like even now to this day, we're always like, we spend more time like dreaming about where the book would end up, and all the talk show hosts were like, oh, maybe we'll go like on Oprah. Maybe Oprah wants to talk to us. We'd spend like the first hour talking about all the places that we like were dreaming of the book going, and then we spent like the other half of it like actually writing. But it was a really fun collaborative process to work with him, and I think one of the things that I really appreciated is that Mr. Rowe, obviously he was my English teacher. He's seen my writing. He's graded my writing. He's taught me how to write. But something that he really brought, his expertise was he brought a lot of what's it called, accountability to the process, and he really brought a lot of structure like a teacher, but he did it in a way where it's like, now we're equals, not student teacher, which I really appreciated. So it was really cool to just like have that process like in person. So we would meet every single week for like about a year and just like write, and of course like dream and laugh about all the places that we wanted to do. We'd like even like say funny quotes that we would like do like in an interview if we ever had some. Like today, I mean, look at me now, here I am. Um, but yeah, we were definitely like, that was like such a fun process. And I think because it was such a fun process, it was such an easy process to like do the book. And I think that we were it was like, what's the saying? Like we were flying and building the plane at the same time because we didn't know anything about picture books. Like we were kind of learning and going as we went. But we finished, and I think that's what's really great. And it's been more difficult now to like kind of meet up and do things virtually, and we're trying our best. Ro and I are actually working on projects outside of picture books. We're actually working on a TV pilot right now. And that's one of the projects we've been working like virtually, but it's just not the same. It doesn't bring the same essence, but we've been doing our best. Not that long ago, we actually did a little retreat with my cousin too, who's helping us write the show. And we took all the safety precautions that we needed to be able to meet up. And we spent 3 days like up in the mountains somewhere in a cabin, just writing. And I think nothing beats writing in person, but we do our best to work virtually now. But it is more difficult to do it, especially when you're writing collaboratively with other folks. You definitely want to, you would like feed off of each other's energy in person, and virtually it's a little bit difficult, but we make it work. And so yeah, I would just say that it just takes the pandemic has taken away some of the momentum, but we're doing our best to make it work as much as possible.
That's great. I'm gonna follow up that question with something because
Yeah.
you mentioned that he's your English teacher, and I think that's
Yeah.
awesome
Yeah.
because my English teacher was my lifesaver. I always called my English teacher in seventh grade was my book pusher. And my only regret is that I never got to thank her. But every time I can, I talk about Miss Green because she was just, because of her, I became a reader. I was reading at a second grade level in sixth grade. So when I came along with her, and I rode the school bus. So her giving
Mhm.
me a book to read every week was just
Mhm.
amazing. So I think it's great. So my question with this is, how did you connect with Mr. Rowe, or how did that happen?
Well, first and most, first, shout out to Miss Green. And she sounds like a wonderful teacher. So the way that we connected was, so I've always been, I have stayed really connected to my high school. We actually just had our 10-year, not our 10-year reunion, not yet. Me and my cousin actually have to plan that probably next year because of the pandemic. But we've had our 10-year anniversary this year, and I've been very fortunate that I went to a really small school, about 500 students. I went to a pilot school in downtown LA called Miel Contreras. But the name of our pilot is called Academic Leadership Community. So only 500 students, a handful of teachers. So it's a very intimate environment. So, we've been very fortunate that we were able to build really strong relationships with our teachers. So I've been very fortunate to stay connected with my high school and the teachers from my high school and the time that I was there. So I think I had it was like 2 years out of college, I want to say. Yes, it was like about 2 years out of college. I think I had just gone back to do like a speaker event for one of the teachers. And while I'm on campus, I always make sure to like do my rounds to go visit everyone. And like, let me back up a little bit. Even just a couple of weeks before that, like the way that the whole book came about was that my nephew Jefferson, I was helping him with some homework. And similar to the folder that's in the cover of the book, I saw that his homework folder had come back spelled incorrectly with a J. And I was like, in my mind, I said, okay, so an adult or somebody had made a conscious decision to change the spelling. But it's like, I know that teachers, when they get their rosters and when they sign up a child to the school, everything's gonna look like what's on their birth certificate, social ID. They're gonna spell it the way that it looks in his legal documents. So I knew that they had purposely changed his name. So that night, I wrote a letter to the teacher, and I was like, I want you to change his like name, like I want you to change the name on his folder to the proper spelling, and then moving forward, I just want you to know that it's really important to honor a child's spelling and pronunciation. Like, um, I think that I think there's a study that even says that like just an adult knowing a child's name, it like makes a whole difference and like connection. So I think I put a little like a little like just like a little like reference to that study. And then the next day, the folder came back corrected with the Y name. And this was the time, it was the pivotal time. It was like kinder, I think, or first. He was like learning how to spell his name. And the last thing I wanted was for it to be spelled with a J. Like I wanted it to be the way that it was, his original, right, with a Y. So that happened. And then a couple of weeks later, maybe even a couple months later, I had gone to my high school. So back to that story. And I knew that Mr. Rowe, he's a writer. He has like a couple of different books that he's attempted to write, like full on manuscripts, but he's never kind of like thrown himself out there to like put his work out there. And I remember just visiting him in the classroom, and I just pitched him the idea. I was like, I think I have this really great idea, and this is where it came from, which was that moment with my nephew, with the homework folder. And then he's like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. And he says, and I think this is true, he says that that day that he told me to just go write it by myself. And I was like, no, that's boring. I'm like, let's write it together. I'm like, I don't know anything about books. You're an English teacher. I know you know how to write. And I have a good idea. Let's join forces and do it together. And then after like a little bit of convincing, he's like, okay, let's do it. And then we took it seriously and we started meeting every week. And that's how it like happened. And him and we have been connected for years. Even after I left to college, him and I would, still connect here and there. And I would always visit the high school. So we've always been connected. And now he's like basically my family, and, his family is like my own family. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. And I was just like, I don't want to do it by myself. I'm like, that's so boring. I'm like, I love doing things in collaboration with others. And he seems like such an unlikely person to do it with. But honestly, it was so much fun. And like I said, he brought so much structure, and we just made a really good team, and we made this really beautiful book together.
That's awesome. That's so great.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. And now I always tell children when I do readings, I was like, you never know. Look at your teachers. 10,
Exactly.
15 years, they could be, you guys can make a book together.
Okay, next question. How long did it take for you to develop the style of writing that you use now? And do you think your own personal style will keep evolving? And if so, how?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good question because I've actually been grappling with my style a little bit recently. So Jefferson actually was the first time I ever explored a writing style. We were, like I said, we were flying the plane and building the plane at the same time. Excuse me. I think something that I did personally, I think Mr. Rowe did this too, was we read a lot of children's books. Like, I mean, I was at the library. I was at Edendale, like every other week, like like checking out as many books as I could. And then of course then I got Libby. Is it Libby? Yeah, I got Libby, and I do it online now, which is great for folks watching. Please download Libby. It's awesome. Um, and So we were just reading. Like I was trying to learn structure, like tone, like arcs, like different writing styles. But in the end, we kind of just honored the form that we were writing it in. And I will say that Jefferson actually is written really untraditionally for a picture book. It's written more like a graphic novel, um, or like a comic book, right, with like bubbles, and some internal monologue. Um, and even for like a while, I was like, oh my God, like, should we have changed it? But then, as as we started to see, like, children really love it. I think they love it. And I think one of the benefits of writing it this way is like, if you're reading it, yeah, you can see the bubbles right there, the conversation bubbles, very much like a graphic novel, comic book. I think what makes it super fun is like, if you're with your family, all of you can choose a different character. right? And you can voice it, um, and have like different folks participating. I think that that's one of the benefits of writing it that way, and children have really loved it. So I was like, for children and families love it. I was like, then we're good. Um, but yeah, so it's a writing style that I really love. I mean, I hope someday I can write a graphic novel, right? And I feel like I already have like the stepping stones given like what we did with Jefferson actually. But right now I am exploring like what it would mean to like explore different writing styles. And I will say it's like a little bit more difficult than expected. But I keep going back to the basics for myself, what works for me, and it's like I keep reading picture books and trying to learn different styles that way, and just taking a stab at it. And I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by other authors and like writing groups who give feedback to my books and my manuscripts, and they've been so incredible at also teaching me different forms of writing. So yeah, I'm surrounded by incredible people who are supporting me and all the different styles and things that I want to explore.
Do you have any advice for our youth who want to become authors?
Oh my God, yes. I actually have a couple. I wrote them down so if you see me looking at my notes. Okay, so my first piece of advice is who cares about the rules? I was like I said, fly the plane and build the plane at the same time. So, just learn as you go, or just create something new, and just put it out into the world. Like, it doesn't have to look the way that everyone else's work looks like. Like, it could be something new, innovative, and creative that's your own, and like honor that and just put it out into the world. The second one is you don't have to do it alone. I did it with my high school English teacher. You could do it with your best friend, your mom, your tias, uncles, whoever you feel comfortable with. And it's so much fun doing something with someone that you care about. Um, the next one is you don't have to be an adult to be an author. Um, I have seen books that have been published and illustrated um, by children. And I don't think it's impossible. So, you know your age range the best. You know the group of people in your age range. So, if anything, I think more children should write books, and I think it's possible. Um, and then the last one is like we definitely need your stories. Your stories matter. And this is, particularly important advice for children of color. I think that children stories that center children of color are still lacking in the publishing industry. So I think, seeing more stories about Black children, Indigenous children, Asian children, Latinx children who encompass all races um, are definitely needed. So whenever, if anyone ever tells you your story isn't important, it is. And we need more stories that way. So that's my advice.
Very good advice, especially the first one.
I know, right? Who cares about the rules?
Let's see. How do your fans contact you? Social media, email?
When I saw that question last night when I was like practicing, I was like, fans. So I was like, who? There's no fans. I have no fans.
You
But
don't know that.
but if folks would like to reach out to me, especially if you're like an aspiring author of color, like I'm happy to like share the little that I do know about publishing and my experience, and hopefully that can support your experience. But you can reach out to me via email at Katherine A. Trejo at gmail.com, Catherine with a K. And then other folks who want to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at Kat Baggins, K-A-T, and then Baggins as in Bilbo, Frodo Baggins from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, now you're going to see all your fans.
So,
what what's something you know now that you wish you knew when you first started to become an author?
I think just that I could be an author, that was possible for me. I mean, I grew up in a single mother household in Los Angeles. an immigrant household as well. And no one in my family is an author, no one's a writer. So I never thought that that was like a career path for me. Um, and don't get me wrong, I have so many talented people in my family, dancers, singers, like musicians, um, and all these things. But, you know, the lack of resources and access, I think, never allowed them to really pursue some of their gifts. And I feel very fortunate that I've been put in a position and very privileged uh, to have an opportunity to become an author. But I think if I could go back, it's like even till now, I still feel weird like saying that I'm an author. Like you know, I have my day job, and then sometimes, like if I'm in other spaces, I'll introduce myself as like the, you know, the position I have like in my 9 to 5. And then every now and then, if I don't feel uncomfortable, I'll be like, oh, and then also I'm an author. But it feels weird. It feels weird to still say it, but I think the more I step into that, being uncomfortable and like, you know, and honoring that I am an author, even if I've just written one book, um, I think has been really helpful. But I just feel, you know, super privileged and honored to have had the opportunity to write at least one book. And I hope that I can continue to create stories.
Yeah, that's another thing. Even that, like, I always tell people, you're not just this, or I'm just plum. It's like, no, own that, you know. So be proud, is what I always tell even the kids or anybody that I meet.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's
yeah,
so
like for instance, where I remember when I was getting my master's, I looked at my dad and I said, "Can you believe I'm getting a master's?" And he looked at me, he goes, "Why not?" You know,
true. Your dad is so right.
it's like,
Yeah, like we doubt ourselves and we just don't feel like we're deserving, but we definitely are for sure.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah, your dad is so right. Why not? Next time I think anything like negative, I'll be like, but why not?
Exactly,
I'll be like Alicia's dad.
Who are some current authors that you find inspiring? We'll leave it.
Oh
We'll leave it like that one, and then I'll say the second part to that. So,
okay, so I actually chose four. So the first one is Alyssa Reynoso Morris. She's an Afro Latina, and she has her debut picture book that's launching next year, and it's called Plátanos Are Love, one of my favorite foods of all time. It hasn't launched it, but I already know that it's a bestseller. It's like the most, it looks incredible. Just the cover alone, I'm like, this is going to be the best book ever. The second one is Dia Mixon, and I hope if I'm pronouncing folks' name wrong, I'm so sorry. So Dia Mixon, she writes incredible books that are inspired by her children who are multicultural, and her books are so awesome. And her children love Jefferson actually, so not to toot my own horn. Then the third one, I'm sure everyone knows Jamila Tompkins Bigelow. She's incredible. She also has an incredible book. Your Name is a Song that talks about the importance of names. And she's like one of my idols. If there's anyone that I could like aspire to write like, it would be her. And then last but not least, my writing mentor, who I wouldn't be here without. I did a mentorship with her through Las Musas for folks who are aspiring authors or want more or want to find more diverse books in the Latinx community. Las Musas is a great place to check out. And I got paired up with Aida Salazar.
mm,
And she has some incredible like middle grade picture books, like everything. Like I mean, she can do it all. She can write it all. But that these are so those are some authors to definitely look up that are doing some incredible work.
nice. So, who are three authors that everyone should check? Oh, well, I guess those are the ones you said, right? Or do
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah.
three others? Okay.
Oh my God. I don't think at top of my head, probably not. But Alisa, Dia, Jamila, and Aida are definitely some authors that folks should check out.
Let me ask you this: what is one book that you have read more than 5 times or more than once? Is there a particular book?
Oh my God. Actually, talking about Jamila, I've actually read Your Name is a Song like more than like 10 times. Like every time, like one of my tricks is to read picture books to study them to like better understand how to write. And that's like a book I always go back to because I think it's written so beautifully. It's like it's just so good. Like every time I read it, I'm like, oh, this is so good. So that's definitely a book that I've read so much, that I enjoy, and I always go back to study as I'm writing my own books. So yeah, big inspiration.
Oh, okay. For me, I'm gonna throw myself in there.
Yeah, no,
Um,
go ahead.
she unfortunately she's no longer with us, but Michelle Cerros, Chicana Falsa, was one of
Chicana
these books that
pasa.
I just read over and over. And she grew up in Oxnard, but I was in my first year of college at Santa Monica,
Hmm.
and I started working at the library. And I don't know, it's just one of those books that I picked up. And she would go to one of my favorite places to eat, which is Tito's Tacos. um,
What's the
but
name of the taco place?
Tito's Tacos, it's in West LA.
Tito's. I'm gonna have to check it out when I'm back.
But yeah, Michelle Cerro's Chicana Falsa was just one of those, the little stories that she wrote, or like, it just I identified with everything she was talking about. So it's one of those books that I read over and over, and I would always tell people, you gotta read this book, you gotta read this book. So
That's incredible. I'm gonna have to check it out. I'll check it out
yes,
from the library. Gotta
yes,
plug in the libraries every whenever we can.
definitely. Um, so can you tell us real quick, what are you working on now? I think you kind of
Okay.
mentioned it, but
Yeah, so I am working on my first solo book, which is super, like, I'm super nervous about it. Because, like, when you do it with someone, it's collaborative, like, there's a lot going on together. Like, we can, problem solve together. But I'm working on my first solo book. And actually, I didn't work on it alone. My writing mentor, Aida Salazar, actually helped me, like, build the bones for the book. Um, and just really motivated me and just really helped me put it together. And now I've been like going back and like doing revisions and getting support from other writers on revisions. But this book is actually very similarly, like I said earlier, my family and my experiences are a big source of my inspiration and influence for my books. And this next book that I'm writing is going to be, and hopefully publishing, got to put it out into the universe that it gets published. This one's going to focus on a childhood memory that I had growing up in a small, which I still live in a small apartment, in the apartment complex where I live now, like growing up with like my grandma and all my cousins and my mom and Tia, like all of us together. Now we live separately in our own apartments, but it's going to be a story that kind of highlights that moment in our lives, and it's really going to uplift joy. I think that a lot of stories that pertain to immigrant families or families growing up in poverty do not center joy enough. And I really want to uplift joy and show that, while we might have a little bit, we had a little bit growing up, that there was still so many joyful moments. So that book is really going to center that. And I'm like 90% done with the book. And I'm hoping that I can start submitting it by the end of this year, and then crossing fingers that someone wants to pick it up and publish it. And hopefully, it's a story that children can connect with.
very cool. Um, Real quick, I want to go over. I'm not gonna give
Yeah.
out all the thing of the book. I read it, but there's this one part that I want you to talk about, and it's just
Oh, yeah,
because
of course.
So I'm gonna read it real quick, and then I'll show.
Okay.
So it's the one where he's gonna talk. Jefferson is gonna talk about what they do when they're eating dinner, when they're having
Oh,
dinner.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm gonna read it both in English and Spanish. So I had a lot of confusing feelings after school. Every night at dinner time, my family goes around and has to share one positive thing from their day. It seemed like everyone had a good day, and then it was my turn. Tuve muchos sentimientos confusos después de la escuela. Todas las noches durante la cena, vamos uno por uno en mi familia compartiendo alguna cosa positiva de nuestro día. Parecía que todos tuvieron un buen día, y luego era mi turno. So my thing is with him, if you look at his face, he's very, you know, very concerned. I think it's very captured. I mean, she captured it perfectly,
Yeah,
because he's
Carla
gonna
did a great job.
share how his his day went, and I know some of you have not read the story, but he's talking about, how is he going to bring up, I mean, his name, right? Or that they
Yeah,
didn't
like
pronounce.
people not pronouncing his name right. Yeah.
So can you,
You went on mute there, Alicia.
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Can
there
you
you go.
talk a little bit about like that, you know?
That scene? Yeah, I can. So actually, this scene was actually inspired by Mr. Rowe's family. Mr. Rowe's family actually sits around at the dinner table, and they actually do have the children share like how their days were and like highlighting the highs and the lows of their day, which usually happen at school, right? Children are at school for most of the day. Um, so I remember when we were thinking about that part of the book, Mr. Rowe had mentioned how he does that with his children, and that's how we incorporated that part of the book, right? Where and I think it also shows some like really healthy like dynamics between like children and their families, right? Where they get to where they're sharing, they're communicating, and they're opening up about their days, even if it wasn't good. I think that's really realistic, right? Like we shouldn't always expect everything to be happy all the time. I think it's also important, like being comfortable and like showing children being able to like share their feelings with their families and showing those like healthy dynamics with each other. And I thought it was like such a beautiful like part because growing up, I grew up in a working class family. We grew up without dads, so we didn't have a quote unquote complete family, but it was complete for us. And because we had a working class family, like everyone had different schedules, so we didn't always get to have those moments to sit down. So when we were writing the book, it was really important for me to be able to write, special moments like that, right? For children and to kind of show those dynamics that they are possible, they do exist, and your family doesn't always have to look complete for it to be a family. So yeah, it's a really little special section, but it came from Mr. It was inspired by Mr. Rowe, and his family.
Yeah, I think, and then I think it's important, and I'm hoping that people, who read it, los que lean esto, el libro, especialmente esa parte que es muy importante de no preguntarle a sus hijos o hijas o de su familia, oh, ¿cómo te fue? Oh, bien. Y nomás lo dejan ahí. Like, you just ask somebody,
Yeah.
like, how was your day? Oh, it was fine. And it's like, no, like I always tell parents, ask your child, talk to your child, tell them, what happened at school today? Who did you play with? Who did you fight with? Who, you know, just things like that. Don't just leave it as
Yeah.
fine because you were there more than 8 hours or 8 hours. Something must have happened.
A lot happens. Yeah, and I think I think that's really important. I think it goes back to like as adults, right? Like how can we and I know that, sometimes it's hard for adults to like show up, right? But if it's possible to show up for your child, right? It's like, sitting down and intentionally listening, right? Whether it's good or bad. I think is super important. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yes. So I think that's why it really caught my attention, that particular part. So
Yeah.
now we're gonna play this or that with
Okay.
Kat just for fun. So I'll begin. Dogs or cats?
Oh my God, I have a dog, so I have to choose a dog. My dog Lily. But
Beach
I
or
love cats.
mountains? Okay. Beach or mountains?
Oh my God, this one's so hard. I love them both, but the heat is just, oh my God. I love swimming. If I had to choose, I'll be in the mountains if it's colder. I'm like,
Oh.
yeah, it's colder. I'll find some like little plot of water and throw myself in there.
Music or quiet when working?
I feel like I'm pretty balanced. I feel like I love everything. I but most of the time I do choose quiet.
Okay.
Yeah, just like sitting in silence.
Day or night?
Oh, definitely night. All my best ideas like come like at 1, 3 in the morning.
Vacation or staycation?
Ooh. I mean, I live in the best city ever, LA. So staycations are always fun in LA.
Summer or winter?
Oh, winter. Oh my God. I'm like in Costa Rica right now and it's so hot and I can't wait to, yeah, fall, winter, all my favorite type of weathers.
And last, singing or dancing.
I don't feel like I can dance, so I'm gonna choose singing in the shower where no one can hear me.
And then I don't know if there's any questions or anything. Diane, we didn't have anything. Yes. No. Nope. Okay. So let me see. Don't have any questions. Okay. Well, there's no questions right now, but thank
No
you, Kat.
worries. No,
Thank you
thank
for
you,
joining
Alicia.
us. Thank you for sharing your journey through this.
Of
And
course.
yeah, can't wait to see what's next for you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
everybody, remember to visit the LA Public Library. And remember that we
Yes.
have all these amazing programs for you. So,
And if I can shout out two libraries in specific, Echo Park Library and Edendale. Those are the ones that I would go to growing up. And I just want to thank you, Alicia. I know that you had to jump in last minute to be here today and moderate. So I appreciate you and for sharing your stories as well. And shout out to the LA Public Libraries. I appreciate y'all.
yeah, thank you. And then our next author, your author is set for September 9th at 4 p.m. when the LA Public Library is proud to present Anusha Syed, I hope I pronounced it correctly, a Pakistani Canadian illustrator based in Toronto who will be discussing her latest book, That's Not My Name, a debut picture book about loving your name, finding your voice, and standing up for yourself. And I lost my notes. Sorry. And as always, those attending this virtual program will have an opportunity to win a free book. Also, please participate in the library's Bio Blitz challenge starting September 1st. And the information is on the screen. Also, put on your calendar September 23rd and September 24th for the Los Angeles Libros Festival. There's also going to be an information on there. And until next time, we truly appreciate your support. The success of all your library programs could not happen without viewers like you. Thank you.